Well, welcome one and all to another week of the Snap No Tap podcast. And ladies and gentlemen out there in internet land, this is the Clash of the Titans. We have a very special guest on, a gentleman that you have heard me talk about for years, going back to when I was doing daily things on Facebook, but he's here in the living flesh, and this is the gentleman that defeated the legendary Joe Cardinal. We have, ladies and gentlemen, best looking man that ever lived, Mr. Scott Hall, direct from my upstairs den. Welcome, Scotty boy.
Hello there.
You know, Scott and Joe go, they have a rivalry. And Joe, do you still think that the voting was rigged?
Well, let's say I've repeatedly demanded for a recount. I think there was suspicious bamboo in the ballots. We all know Scott has close ties with Venezuela and China. I mean, do I need to say anything more?
Well, here's a couple of things that you have to realize. First of all, Joe, I got good news and bad news for you. Okay. Here's the good news for you. You have better hair. Okay. So you win that battle. However, I have some really bad news, and Scott is a witness. The other day when I had the caretaker here, I was able to go to Chicago with Scott, and I was told in the presence of Scott Hall, sitting right next to me, that I was the best looking Italian man that this person has ever seen in their life. Is that wrong or right, Scott?
That is correct.
Now, were you guys visiting an optometrist at this point, or?
No, right? So Joe, I don't know what to say. You know, you're only a part Italian, so I think you're probably better looking overall, but you just don't carry that Italian thing, okay? I carry the whole weight of the Italian history and culture going all the way back to ancient times. I mean, this is a burden for me. All right. Scott doesn't have to worry about that stuff. But nonetheless, for those of you who are like startled at the beauty in front of you, Scott has been my closest Goomba. I've known Scott now 7 years since I moved out. I moved out here 8 years ago. So I met him like 7.5 years ago. You've heard me talk about him being on my, we were on pool teams together, and, we go catting around, and Scott's got a very interesting history that I want him to get into, but I'll give you a little synopsis here. He was a state champ swimmer. He was 16 years, retired from the United States Navy, a phenomenal pool player, bon vivant, ladies man, you name it. And one of the greatest people that I've ever met. And it's an honor to have my two closest friends, Joe and Scott, on this podcast, although it has to be at a distance. Okay. Because, these two they'll get into it. And Scott used to own a martial arts school too. So we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. So since I already know Scott, I think we're going to see how good your interview skills are, Joe. So fire away at the legend.
Oh, hey, Scott. Yeah.
Hey, Joe.
How's it going? Glad you could join us. Well, let's start at the beginning. Where'd you grow up? Where are you from?
I was born in East St. Louis, Illinois. We left and moved to Chicago when I was about 8 years old. I started to swim competitively when I was 5. Culminating in my becoming state champion of Illinois for the 50-yard freestyle.
Wow. Now, whereabouts in Chicago were you in the city proper? What neighborhood?
No. McHenry, northwest suburbs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you're a freestyle champion at high school level?
Yes.
Wow, that's still really good. So you've already got me beat there. I did swim in high school too, but my coach referred to what I did as basically bathing without soap was the effect of my swimming. But I did it as kind of a conditioning addition to my training. But yeah, if we came up against real swimmers like you, it was forget it. I had no chance. So that's cool. So was it freestyle? Did you also do other strokes?
Yeah, I did 100-yard freestyle as well and butterfly.
Okay.
Tell them that you got your start big time with brag a little bit about Hinsdale, because that's where your career in high school actually started.
Yeah, well, my folks got divorced and Dad moved me into a town called Hinsdale. Excuse me. And I went to Hinsdale Central High School, which was either the number 1 or 2 rated high schools in the nation. And the coach there, his name was Don Watson, was my coach. And then he ended up leaving Hinsdale years later and became the Olympic coach, training Olympian swimmers out of Colorado Springs at the Air Force Academy.
Wow.
That's where they had Junior Olympics too, and I went. But yeah, the swimming career it was my mainstay of my life. If I hadn't been an athlete, who knows what had happened.
So what happened after high school? Were you doing were you doing other sports during high school, or was your main focus swimming?
No, if I was going to get a scholarship, nobody wanted me to play football.
Did you end up getting a swimming scholarship, or did you
No. I ended up graduating early and joined the Navy.
What attracted you to the Navy?
Swimming. I figured if we're going down, we're going down big. I might as well go someplace where I know what I'm doing.
Were you considering anything like, I know they have a lot of different, roles for people who have swim skills like divers and things like that. Did you look at for that or?
No, I volunteered for nuclear submarines and I spent 16 years in the service.
Wow, that's a pretty intense program to get into, isn't it? I think.
Yes, it is.
So that actually, to me, would be the last choice. I think for a place I'd want to be in the services, man. That I think it scares me on multiple levels. Just being underwater like that in an enclosed space. I don't have any kind of claustrophobia, but
Looks, they had to keep separated from the rest of the armed services because there would have been riots if he was above ground. Think about it.
So what class submarines were you on then?
SSBNs. I was in Polaris missile submarines.
Wow. Are those nuclear?
Yes.
Nuclear armed, or are they just?
Yes.
Wow. That's also got to be kind of, at least for me, would be anxiety producing. But
yeah, we had nuke tipped torpedoes and 16 ICBM missiles behind me.
Wow. And so what years are we talking about?
Active, I was 77 to 83.
So like right in the height of the Cold War.
Then I went into the reserves for 10 years.
So in those subs, like how long would you be deployed? Like when they kick off? So would you deploy out of like the East and West Coast, depending, or?
No, I was strictly a West Coast sailor. I was stationed out of Hawaii, but our submarine was actually out of Guam. So we'd spend some off time in Hawaii and then fly over to Guam and pick up our sub.
How far of a flight is that?
Depends on how many drinks I had. Sometimes it was really long.
I just have no idea the geography, how close that is.
You know what? I can't remember. I'm going to tell you, it was probably out of Hawaii. It was probably 7 hours.
Wow, so that's pretty significant still. Though.
Yeah.
Because I think like I've only been to Hawaii once as a kid, and I think it was like 7 or 8 hours from Los Angeles.
Yeah, it is.
So a similar distance to the mainland, to Guam.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I've gone back to Hawaii many times since then. But I lived in Waikiki. I was 19 to 22 years old,
Oh, man.
which was great.
I can only imagine. That sounds amazing. And it's amazing to be there at any time. Actually, one of the guys who was on our podcast earlier lives in Hawaii. Jason Godwise, he lives there, you know, and yeah, I just seems like the right move. Whenever you get a chance, that should be the place you should be living. It sounds like, even if the cost of
Oh,
living stuff there.
I'd love to, man. Believe me, it's a little spendy, but the rewards are still prevalent.
Oh, I can imagine. And because I know there's an army base there. I think, is it the 25th Infantry that's stationed there in Hawaii? Because I looked this up.
Lightning,
Yeah.
Tropic Lightning.
Yeah, that but man, to be stationed there would be, if you're going to sign up, see if you can get there. That seems like the place to be.
But we would go out typically 90 days at a time underwater.
Wow, 90 days. And what's that like? I mean, like the first time you were out for 90 days, how did that weigh on you mentally? Was it just like, were you getting crazy cabin fever? I mean, like when we had this lockdown for COVID when it first hit, and you know, I felt like I was under house arrest. I can't remember, just a couple of weeks into it, I was like, I got to get out of here. I got to go places, you know?
Yeah. Well, it was my first patrol. You have to go through a qualification process to earn your dolphins, which is a insignia you're wearing outside of your uniform. And that usually takes 2 patrols. I did it in 1. And the premise of it is to qualify for subs is that you should be able to take over anybody's job on the sub if they go down. And believe me, that's a tall order when you're talking about nuclear reactors and stuff like that. It took some brain power, and you can't read a book, can't see a movie, you can't do anything except qualify for subs, your first patrol.
Tell them what your MOS was when you were on the sub.
I was a radioman.
And that is actually quite intriguing because Scott would get special messages. Why don't you talk a little bit about that, what that entails? Because, you know, it's not listening to, you know, Adrian Cronauer and shit, you know, it's serious stuff.
Yeah, well, we would get family grams, and it was 40 words or less once a week from your family. And then you disperse those, you print them out and disperse those out throughout all the crew. And one time that I need to mention, a guy had received a Dear John family gram.
Oy.
And when you see that as a radio man, I'm the first guy to read them. The guy tripped offline and started to turn valves on the sub.
Shit.
Yeah, he wanted to take us all with him.
Yeah, I've heard that. Remember that Malaysian flight that went down a few years ago?
Yeah,
that they couldn't
sure.
find. I think
4380, yes.
But I think at least I heard from Ben. I was talking to him, but apparently that was a similar thing where it was kind of like a, you know, mass suicide. You know, like the pilot was taking himself out, but was willing to take everybody else with him too.
Yeah, I recall that. Yeah.
Which is always, to me, you know, dude, just, you know, get a gun or something, do it later. Why take everybody with you?
Yeah,
Granted,
right.
the situation with the, you know, the other sailor, he couldn't go anywhere, like he was stuck there, but
He's
damn.
pretty stuck, yeah.
So I imagine they must have had to restrain him. Yeah.
So what we do, we shot him up with Thorazine for 35 days
Wow.
and put a watch on his bunk so he couldn't go wandering around. Not that you can do a lot of wandering when you're on Thorazine anyway. It really knocks you down, man.
Well, you know, Scott, maybe we can segue into the one incident where you're lucky to be talking to us, where your sub was going to hull crush depth level.
Yeah, that happened. Not to get too technical about it, but back aft in the engineering spaces, a guy named Parrott decided to shut down a hydraulic accumulator, which is what you use to turn the fairplanes, you know, the things that stick out on top of a sub. And he secured that hydraulics which means we were stuck in a downward position
Jesus.
for at least 20 minutes. And we hit a depth that they never thought we could actually go that deep.
Do you actually start to hear the creaking like in the mood, like from the pressure and
Oh,
things,
sure.
or-
Well, you can take a string from one side of the boat to the other, port and starboard. And when you go down, you pull it real tight across and attach to the walls, to the bulkheads. And by the time you get down to about 700 feet, the rope is not touching the ground.
Jesus. Wow. That's
So the stuff they make submarines out of is called HY80, and it's meant to contract, obviously.
Well, how deep did you go on that unplanned dive?
1,750 feet.
And what's crush? What's depth level?
Well, we don't know, thank God.
Okay.
The crush depth is usually around 1,500 feet.
wow. And
Wow.
how many atmospheres is that technically, or like roughly?
I'd have to go back to my diving stuff. How many atmospheres? 33 feet per.
Oh, geez, 33 feet per. So
Yeah,
I'll have to get a calculator out.
yeah,
Okay.
right. Maybe we'd be better at that than I am, Joe.
Let me do it real quick. That's 51 atmos.
Sounds about right. Sounds about right. Yeah.
So what's normal, like cruising, I guess? I don't know if that's the right term.
Yeah,
depth?
yeah, no, that's cool. About 300 feet.
Wow, that's still way under. See, the thing
Yeah.
is, I kind of feel like your choice, even though you have great swimming skill, I don't think it would help you in any of these circumstances.
No, it wouldn't. The only reason I went for subs is they paid 50 extra bucks a month for hazard duty pay. and at when I got in at 18 years old, 50 bucks meant a lot.
Yeah, I
was
can
your-
imagine.
That was
I
your
don't
beer
know.
money.
I'm trying to think if there's any money they could pay me to do that. Like, what would be my, I can't imagine right now, because this, all what you're describing terrifies the hell out of me.
What you don't understand is all the other sailors on that submarine, they were paying $50 a month just to be that deep with Scott. I mean, so actually the Navy made money on him.
Okay.
And speaking of that, what was your crew? How many people on board?
About 120.
Yeah, that's sardines, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, how big was your sub?
410 feet long.
So roughly a little bit larger than a football field, lengthwise. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I
And
mean, that is a big boat, though. Still,
yeah.
It's
How many
almost as nice
levels?
as my sailboat.
How many levels?
Not including the sail, which is the part that you see sticking up out of the water all the time when they're doing photographs of it and so forth. It's 57 feet keel to hull.
I see.
So how many levels do we have?
Yeah.
Including the nuclear reactor 4.
Hmm.
But nobody ever goes down there.
And your job, or not yours specifically, but that sub was to keep the bad guys away, the Russians, correct?
Yes, that we were the defining force of détente.
We may need you again. Jeez, everything that's
Yeah,
going
no
on.
shit. Yeah, no shit.
But yeah, it's part of the
Um,
nuclear trident, right? So you've got the subs, the airplanes, and the missiles.
Yeah.
So the 90 days, how far would you guys go? Like you'd start at Guam, and like where could you end up?
Go
I
to
guess
the
I'm giving
South-
away our state secrets, but I'm sure they know all of this or whatever.
They
but
do. The South China Sea,
South China Sea. So like what countries is that near?
South Korea.
Oh, okay. And did you have multiple routes, or was that kind of your general circuit?
That was our general patrol package. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very, now, who was the, I would assume you did not have an admiral on board, but what was the highest ranking naval officer on board?
Commander.
Commander.
Yeah. Not a captain, a commander.
Okay.
On my first 2 subs, his name was Owens, and he ended up being the assistant joint chiefs of staff at the Pentagon. He was a bright boy. He was a good guy and a bright man, very bright.
That's very interesting. I mean, that we know a lot of the majority of the people we know, Scott, are veterans, but you run into very few submariners. I think you and I have, Scott, we've run into one guy, an old timer, right?
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
he
one
was
guy.
a World War II or Korea sub.
He was in
I don't
during
remember.
Korea, yeah.
Yeah.
He was on diesel boats, not nukes.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, very interesting. Well, Scott also, when he was not on board sub and he was back in Hawaii, became quite an adroit surfer. He has a lot of interesting stories about Hawaii and the locals. Let's talk about those. Those are interesting stories.
Well, first of all, you get an apartment and 6 guys live in it in a 1-bedroom because you're never there unless you're just going to pass out. And there used to be a place called Hamburger Mary's. And, we weren't making any money, but we had enough to eat, which really wasn't our biggest priority. Beer was our biggest priority. But there was a place called Hamburger Mary's, and it was 50-cent hamburgers. And that's what we sustained ourselves on for, 60 days at a time. Besides the fish that we caught. With a Hawaiian sling. It looks like a frog poker. And it's got a long rubber tube on it, and it looks like a spear. And you crank that thing up and hold on to it real tight. And you come up on a fish and let it go, and it sticks them right where you want it. So we did our share of fishing too.
Surfing.
What's that?
How did you get into surfing?
Oh, well, on my first flight over to Hawaii, I had my bag with me, the long tube-like bags. And I put it in a locker, went straight to Waikiki on a bus, rented a surfboard, and went for it. For very first day. Got 2nd-degree burns. Yeah, that was something. Jeez. Never put Noxema on a burn. It just seals the heat in and you cook longer.
Oh, God.
Oh, boy.
So how long to me, I always felt like Hawaii is that's the birthplace of surfing.
Yeah.
And it's still the ideal location. I mean, maybe Australia too, but I think most of their places, a lot of places I see surfing, I guess Brazil, they surf too, like they do in Hawaii. And what I mean by that is so I have a brother-in-law who's in Northern California and he surfs there, but he's got to have a wetsuit on. It's so cold.
Oh yeah.
And I, but besides the great white sharks and shit like that, I'm like, once it's cold, I'll take a pass. But when it's warm, like when you have in Hawaii, when you're cooling off, when you hit the water, that makes sense to me. Cause I know if I'm surfing, I'm going to spend most of my time in the water. I'm not going to be on that board very long. So I don't want, I don't want to be in a situation where, I get enough cold here in Chicago. If I'm doing some kind of activity like that, I want it to be nice and warm.
Yeah, absolutely.
So did you throughout all your stay in Hawaii, were you just constantly surfing on your days off?
Every chance I could get.
Cool. And then is there a rating system with surfing as to like they do with skiing or something where they you can see what level you're at or what challenge, what kind of wave?
Not that I'm aware of. It might have changed by now, but not that I'm aware of. It was strictly like an open championship. And so you go to surf contests and that's where you accumulated your scores. I never entered one, not in Hawaii, not on the North Shore. Those waves were too big for me. And the coral was too shallow.
What's the biggest wave you think you've ridden?
Probably about 8 feet.
That sounds like a lot of fun still. Did you ever get instruction or you just kind of figure it out?
No, I got, they call them beach boys and they're big old Hawaiian guys. And the guy that I had was, I don't know, he was probably 45. And so my first lessons were on a longboard, the real long boards, not these little things that you see today where they're cutting the waves up. But he taught me how to stand up, how to turn, and not run over anybody. That's her biggest concern, is you're running over somebody.
And how big those longboards are? Kind of big. Like if you're hitting them, that's
Oh,
like
yeah,
hitting
yeah,
a
yeah.
door.
You're talking 10 to 11 feet.
Wow. That's super cool though. So
I had
I
a ball.
imagine you must miss it.
Yeah, I do. I do. Well, I didn't stop just in Hawaii. When I met my wife in Pensacola, Florida, we got transferred to California, Southern California. So I picked it up again there, and I surfed there for, I don't know, 5 years or so, something like that. That's when
That's still wetsuit, right? That's still cold enough to be.
in the winter, yeah,
Hmm,
in the winter, but during the summer, it's no big deal.
Okay, cool. Did you ever have any shark spottings?
No, dolphins,
Oh, that must have been cool.
porpoises, yeah, that was cool. They love being around surfers, and they surf themselves.
That's cool. I didn't know that. So they just kind
Yeah,
of
they
like
stick
ride
their
out the
nose,
wave?
they stick their nose in front of a wave and kick, and they're cruising.
Awesome.
Let's talk about the Navy SEALs and your encounters with them, because there's some misconceptions about them. They get all the glory and stuff, but I can tell by watching them, they're not the most skilled hand-to-hand guys. As a matter of fact, I've trained some of them in the past. People just kind of think they're, this and that. But, tell the world about your swimming encounters with the SEALs.
Well, I was gonna go out for SEALs coming out of boot camp, and they took me over to a building, and there was a pool in it, and they had to give you a swimming test from the get-go. If you couldn't swim, you're out. So I'm these other 3 or 4 SEALs, I told them about my background, and they said, well, we're gonna whoop your ass. And I don't think so, buddy. I don't think so. So I whooped their asses. And yeah, they're not good technical swimmers. They're more for swimming underwater with flippers.
Well, they use a different stroke too, like side stroke or something, right? They don't use the.
No, you put your arms right down at the sides and at your sides, and use your legs for most of your motivation.
Yeah, because they're trying not to splash. That's a big issue, right?
That's
So
a big deal. And no air bubbles.
Hmm.
So they use enclosed breathing apparatus.
Yeah, but I've heard like a lot of guys who sign up for the SEALs. I think people are being smarter about it now, but back in the day, they'd be whatever, generally athletic, but people underestimate how tough swimming is if you're a non-swimmer,
Oh God, yeah.
and it's just kind of like wrestling, honestly. There's guys who from their athleticism, can grapple with somebody, but when they come up with somebody who grew up wrestling, who knows the proper ways of doing it, it'll blow past their athleticism.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with any athletic activity, but I think that you would see that a lot with that a lot of guys who are, they could be generally very fit, they could, run for miles and miles and do, 2 hours of a calisthenic workout. But when they hit that water, and also it's a psychological thing too. I know a lot of like, because I've read a lot of stuff about their training and things like that. And then they say some guys, it's just, you get that first mouthful of water, accidentally, and it's like a brainstem thing. It can terrify you. If you think you're going to drown,
Oh yeah.
if you're not used to that. One of my friends, maybe we'll have him on this podcast at some point. I mean, he has no real background related to the context. He's just a fun guy, but one of his sons is looking to get into the SEAL teams. He's a wrestler, which means he's got his, conditioning up, but he's also plays water polo. And so he's used to
Oh, is
swimming.
that right?
Yeah. He's used to having his head dunked, and, like he's used to kind of, staying, in water and being under duress in water, which I think is a great way to prep for that.
Yeah, I have played water polo in high school as well. I loved it.
Oh, really? Now that would be interesting comparison. So what, like physical demand wise, how would you compare it to general swimming, and what were the differences?
Your breathing.
Hmm.
Your breathing is very rhythmic in swimming.
Correct. Yeah.
And in wrestling, I don't know that that's the case.
But for water polo, like how is the
You swim your
breathing?
ass off as fast as you can. everywhere.
And now, how does it work with pools? Because you have a deep end and a shallow end. So like, do you switch sides like halftime? Like,
No, the pool that I played in was 5 feet deep. The whole pool was 5 feet deep.
So that's like a official water polo.
Yeah.
Then?
Yeah.
And so so basically everybody's treading for the whole game?
Yes.
And how long?
Well, you stand up from time to time, but not very often.
And then you probably have to have a pretty strong kick to like pass the ball, right? Like you have to kind of explode up. Are you like jumping off the bottom or kicking?
No, you're not jumping off the bottom. You're kicking.
Wow. And like, what are some of the rules? Because like, I mean, if we can spend some time talking about it, because to me, it's like one of those interesting sports, but it's not super mainstream, so people don't know about it. It's kind of like lacrosse to me or something. Like it's a cool sport, but people really don't grasp the rules. Like, what are some of the things you can and can't do? Because it does seem like I see them, looks like they're grappling each other trying to get that ball. What are you allowed to do?
That's true, Joe. There's a lot that goes on underneath the water.
That's true. They probably
you
can't
try to hook a guy and end up in front of him using his body as a buoy. There's always the fabled kicking him in the nuts. Yeah, all that stuff applied.
Well, I think the big thing is the SEALs have an overall agenda, right? So they're skilled at things that help them get to their agenda. But there are people out there that I'm sure think they're world champion level at all those skills, and nobody is. Nobody can be. Like biathletes that ski and shoot. They're not the world's greatest skiers. They're probably not the world's greatest shots, but the combination of it, they're the best in the world at what they do. And that's the eliteness of the SEALs. When you take the totality of it, and it's really, it's kind of like you take an MMA guy who can do all sorts of different elements. Rarely do you have a guy you've never had a guy yet who's the world's greatest at everything, meaning he's the greatest wrestler in the world, the greatest striker, the greatest kicker. It's not possible. It's not feasible. So I think that gets lost, especially when you're making movies about, special forces or Navy SEALs and it becomes glamorized. And I knew a guy, he passed away, also sadly of Alzheimer's, because also an accordionist, but he was a combat pilot in Korea. And then he had I believe it was a 30-year career flying 707s for American Airlines.
Huh.
And yeah. I remember talking to him. He lived way out in unincorporated Elgin. So I was living in the city. So many nights or many times when I would go over there, I would just spend the night because he had this nice house. Him and his wife were wonderful people. And he would talk candidly about, well, I wasn't the world's greatest, combat pilot. And he says, and many airline pilots weren't combat, like fighter pilots. He was a fighter pilot. I should say he was a fighter pilot. I guess sometimes people just think, oh, these guys are, but boy, I remember him telling me, I asked him some questions like really pertinent. And he's like, I'm not going to answer those questions. And we were close friends. And his name was Ted. I said, why not, Ted? He's like, because if I told you, you would never fly again. Now, well, I know what he was alluding to. And that was that this is back then now. These pilots were drunk. Okay. They would get on board drunk. And if you recall several years ago, there were a few pilots that the shit hit the fan and they got caught drinking at the airport.
That was for Northwestern Airlines. Yeah, I remember that.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I'm sure, that's what he was alluding to, because I know that they were some of the pilots he was telling me were footloose and fancy free with they called them stews back then, with the flight attendants. Okay, well that's not going to scare me from flying. So I have to think what would be the the biggest thing that would keep me from flying. Well, yeah, if the captain in charge.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
pilot.
it's like invite me in for a shot and a beer. Okay. Really, it's just, but let me get back onto some other things about Scott, since I know him better than I know anybody else at this point. And we're going to make a correction on something that Joe said, and Scott answered no, but Scott was wrong. And that is, Joe asked him if he ever ran into a shark, and Scott said no, but that's not true. Let's talk about the one shark, and you can back up and tell us, first of all, let me talk about how you got started shooting pool, and then lead us up to the story about a legendary pool shark, Little Al. But how did you get started shooting pool, Scott?
Oh God, Little Al. Okay. My folks got divorced. Dad would take us to church, me and my brother and I. And after that, we go to a pool hall. So I was shooting pool when I started shooting pool when I was 13.
Well, that's how Scott and
which culminated in my being handed my ass by a guy named Little Al. And
many years.
I was hanging around
many years later.
I was hanging around with guys that went to Vegas and for the 8-ball championships and 9-ball championships and stuff like that. One of them was the winner. He won the 8-ball championship. And I described to him who I shot the other night and lost a bunch of money to. And he said, "Oh my God, you played Little Al." And I said, "What does that mean? You're the world champion here. What does that mean?" He goes, "Nobody plays Little Al."
Well, I met Scott via the pool table. There was a bar in town. I was going through my divorce, and so I'm a pool player, and the table that they had at this bar was horrible, and you had to use a short stick along one side of the wall and all of this jazz. But yeah, I've played them, similar conditions and so on. So that's how Scott and I met, and frankly, it wasn't long before, we got the reputation of, being the best pool players, in the county pretty much. Yeah, really nobody, there was a couple other guys that we'll get to that in a minute, that were, really good. But they never really hung around us, they didn't come to our part of town. So anyway, the bar decides that they wanted to start a pool league. So I got approached, and it was really strange. Scott was playing for a different team. I was playing for these guys that really just weren't, they loved the game. They just weren't very good. So, and it seemed every week we went out, there was fights, arguments, fights. You name it,
Oh yeah.
It wasn't enjoyable. So Scott was catting around with this husband and wife, Pete and Tanya was 5th in the state of Illinois, female 8-ball, 9-ball. And Pete, her husband, was a very good shot, really, really good. So they kind of stole me away from the other team. They're like, you're our piece of the puzzle. You join Scott, and we'll be able to whoop everybody. So that's how Scott and I became teammates. Sadly, I blew my arm out, my bicep, near the end of the season. But but we did extremely well. We got our trophy, and but along the way, there was a guy, I don't remember his name now, but we always called him ESPN boy, because he was the hot shot. Now, I want to explain something to everybody here, because this is important. So he was the hot shot. As a matter of fact, he was so hot, he was unbeaten. Okay, never lost. And in the league. So he's playing at our bar. It's teams. Now, the problem with this bar league thing, the rules are kind of funky. So when it comes down to the 8-ball, you can't just call the pocket, but you literally had to take a bar coaster and you had to put the coaster by the pocket. All right. Now that sounds easy, but it's, I've been playing pool 40 years or whatever. And, we don't do that. So it's not a habit. You have to constantly remind yourself, and your teammates are not allowed to tell you to put that coaster. You'll get disqualified.
Right.
So anyhow, we're playing ESPN boy. Scott has him first. Scott gets the guy first. And lo and behold, Scott does his magic on the pool table, gets to the 8-ball, calls the pocket, sinks the 8-ball, but didn't put the coaster down.
So I lost.
So he lost. So
But I beat him fair and square, man.
you did. So ESPN boys gloat. Well, he's sweating a bullet, but he's like still bragging, gloating in a way that he's still unbeaten. And Pete, he was the captain of the team. He's a hothead. Well, Pete couldn't handle him. He had blown through Pete. So the next round or round after that was going to be my time. I said, don't worry, I'll get him. I said, promise you I'll get him. And thankfully I can say I got him. And I did not forget to put the coaster down. So I ended his streak. And to this day, Scott hates me as much as Joe hates Scott, because Scott's like, I'm the guy that beat him first and you get all the glory. Well, when you're a narcissist like Scott, no, I'm kidding. No.
Oh, yeah. Hey, I'll be right with you guys. I'm going to take a break real quick.
Yep, we'll be right here. But, while we got to wait for him to come back, because I got something, like really cool to bring up about him. But Scott's got a very uniqueness about him. He's very intelligent, dresses. That's what first time I ever saw Scott was because he didn't dress like everybody around here. I'm like, man, this guy can't be from here. And really, he's not. He'll tell you his story. He's lived in a lot of interesting places around the country, not out of the country, but yeah, he's articulate. He's fun. We've gotten into some situations. I don't know if he wants to talk about them on camera, but
That's surprising with you, Tony, that you got somebody into a situation.
Oh, wait a minute. No. He got me into him, but the ESPN guy, he was a very good shot. And he, me with my memory for names and things has completely been obliterated, but he had a cue stick custom made that, I have custom made ones too, but his was a very good one. I cannot remember the cue's name again, because, I'm the type of guy with my memory loss. I have to keep reminding myself almost every day of topics or names, and I forget, but he was like kind of funny. I just wanted to hold the stick, not even shoot anything. I just wanted to hold it, feel it, because I was looking for another cue at the time. And I was thinking maybe getting not his say, but have his cue maker make me a cue. And I wish I could remember the name of that guy. I want to believe his name begins with an A, but Andy keeps coming into my head. But he's known by his last name. Gilbert, maybe. I don't, I don't remember. But yeah, he was so like pool players are kind of funny about that, because they don't, they just don't want their sticks, misused. And I get that.
I definitely kind of have hesitation when a guy asks to hold my stick, for sure.
Yeah, that happens to you a lot, Joe. But I was saying about when you were gone, Scott, about, you've lived all over the place. And the reason we first started talking was, you don't dress the part. You don't dress like the guys around here. You're more smart about it, more upscale, and you have a different vocabulary, and you've lived in a lot of interesting places. So maybe we can discuss some of that. But the one beautiful thing about, I say I'm lonely out here, and I am. And really the only women that I ever end up dealing with or talking to is through Scott, because every time he breaks up with somebody, they end up calling me or texting me. Why is that? And I tease him about that. It's unbelievable. But so yeah, tell us some of the interesting places you lived in, and accumulate that with or culminate that with your favorite place to live.
Well, Hawaii'd be up there for sure. San Diego was another. Seattle was another. LA was another. Pensacola, Florida was another. Atlanta was another. Let me think.
Well, Dallas, of course.
Well, Dallas, I was there for 11 years. Yeah. But yeah, I've had an opportunity to live in some really beautiful places, man. Seattle, on a clear day in Seattle, it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful with the volcanoes and all that good stuff. Mount Rainier. Didn't much care for LA as much just because of the damn traffic. It took me 2 hours to get to work and 2.5 hours to get home every day in that traffic. And I finally said it wasn't worth it and moved on. But yeah, I've been in many places: New York, Miami, Atlanta, Pensacola, St. Louis, obviously Chicago.
Indianapolis.
What's that?
Indianapolis.
Yeah, I lived in Indy for 4 years. Yep. I'm aging myself now.
Where did you have your martial arts school? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about your martial arts.
Okay. A buddy of mine that I played sand volleyball with owned a karate studio, Kenpo studio. And he and I got to be friends. And he didn't have very much business sense. He was a great instructor, great coach, but he didn't have a lot of business sense.
Yeah, I wonder what's that like, Tony?
Yeah, right. I'm the same.
But so I started to take lessons from him. And as it eventuated, we ended up being partners. So I was part owner in the Kenpo studio in Laguna Hills, California. And we went around to tournaments and all that good stuff. I was he was awesome. He won internationals one year while I was there against Billy Blanks. Yeah, he was good. Stevie was good. But yeah, you know, when you get into buying a Kenpo studio or a karate studio, you end up with a whole bunch of little kids, all kinds of little kids, because the moms are soccer moms, but they're karate moms. So they drop their kids off, go shopping or going to do whatever they're going to do, get their nails done or whatever. And you're there probably dominantly as a babysitter. But it was fun. It was fun. We had a lot of good times going around to tournaments and stuff like that. And we'd fight in places like South Central and Compton, and where, you know, when we bring in our crew, we're like the only white guys in the place.
How long did you have the school?
3.5 years. 3.5
Very
years.
good.
They gave us the boot. They would not renew our license because said that the place, Laguna Hills, and it is an upscale community, and they really didn't want undesirables in there.
Oh,
So they didn't renew our lease. So that was the end of that.
yeah. I've known several people that had bars, taverns, and leasing it out. You know, they're renting the building part of it, and then yeah, well, you know, they're there for years. They remodel, they do all of this, and then they get the boot. And sometimes it's because of greed of the landlord, because, you know, in one case, my one friend, he remodeled the bathrooms, he put new tile on the flooring, and then boom, that's it, no more lease. And you know, it's sad because he had never had any problems. So it wasn't like that. And it was Chicago. So, I mean, on a main street on Belmont, you know, so it wasn't like Laguna Hills. Yeah, it can be really difficult to rebound from that, you know. And as a matter of fact, the 3 people that I know that happened to, they never got back into the bar business again. That was it. They're like, forget it. You know, it's just not, you know, it's not worth it. So I understand that fully. Like when I lost my gym and I lost all my equipment, my mats, all my weights, everything, you know, I'll never own a business again. Why? It's not, I can't do it financially because I accumulated that gear over a course of time, years. So I would never do it again. So yeah, when you have a bad landlord or something, it can really leave a bad taste in your mouth.
It did. It sure did.
So Scott, I have, how familiar are you with other karate styles? And the reason I'm asking, I guess, is like, can you differentiate or define what makes Kenpo karate different from other styles? Is that something you can describe?
Well, Kenpo is a combination of circular motions and hard style like Japanese karate. It's a combination of them both. There's not a lot of grappling involved in Kenpo at all. It's all striking and kicking.
Where did the circular motions come from? Kung Fu or something? Or
Yeah,
is it
yeah. Uh-huh.
is it a specific style of Kung Fu that they drew from, or do you know? And it may not, if you don't,
Well,
that's
there's
okay.
so many, there's so many studios that were out there when we went to tournaments and stuff that were Kung Fu studios. Aside from Chuck Norris's outfit and Bruce Lee's stores. But I can't recall one particular style. Ed Parker invented Kenpo.
Ah, okay, yeah, I've heard that. That's right.
Yeah,
Okay.
he was a big Hawaiian kid. He was Caucasian, but he was big. He was built like a lion. Big hands. But
Did you meet him?
Ed Parker?
Yeah.
No,
Oh,
no,
okay.
no. I know Stevie had my instructor. I know Steve had run into him a couple of times.
What do they call Caucasians in Hawaii, or the not, you know?
Howleys.
Yeah, right. I forgot. Yeah.
Howleys.
Always?
Yeah.
Howleys. Yeah.
You know, so Scott's very, you know, and it's an interesting thing because I think because of his martial arts training, even though his pool playing predates that, I think there is always crossover when you have that athleticism. Now, most pool players that I know are not athletes. Okay.
This is true.
At all. But I think when you're a good athlete, you know, it makes learning any kind of skill, a little bit easier. But the problem with, or not a problem, but the thing about pool is it's as much strategy, okay, as it is athleticism. That's why older players can still hang pretty good. Their eyesight fails, or their hands start to shake, or they don't have the endurance because, you know, you get tired walking around the table and up and down bending and, you know, this and that. So you have to have, you don't have to have fitness per se, but your body has to be accustomed to that. And sometimes you slow down, but I think Scott's pool, I think his martial arts probably helped his pool playing a lot. And when Scott's on, he's really on. He's really good. So yeah, you got to get back into playing, Scott, this spring and summer. We have to.
All right.
I want to ask you
Yes.
guys, kind of to your point about athletes and pool playing, would you consider, and I guess I'll ask both, put this question to both you guys. Do you consider pool a game or a sport?
The game.
Yeah, a game all the way.
Yeah, it's a game. Yeah.
It's definitely not a sport. Don't let them bullshit you. It's not a sport.
Yeah, because I was thinking to your earlier point, Tony, is there is some physicality there. I mean, if you have issues physically, you can't play the game. You know, like I always, this is all just semantics, but it's interesting to me because, like, you know, Stephen Hawking could play and win a game of chess. You know, like he could just talk through what he needs done.
Yeah.
But he's never going to get on a pool table. You know, so there, it's like golf, right? Where's that line? You know, golf. You know, between golf.
Have you
and
ever
pool,
seen? Look, have you seen a hibachi chef? They're flipping knives and they're doing all of that jazz. That's not a sport, okay? That's a style of cooking, and it's a great style, and they're flamboyant with their moves. Same thing with pool. Pool is not a sport. I don't care what they say. They can call it that all they want because they probably are. It's just like darts. I mean, I get what you're saying, Joe, but you cannot make that correlation that because almost auto mechanics, is that a sport? If you're paralyzed from the neck down or you got, you know, crippling injuries, you can't fix cars. You know,
Well,
just
so,
because
yeah,
you can't
I'll
do
define it
something
this way.
physically doesn't make it a sport.
We'll have
Huh?
this digression then. Sorry, Scott, we're torning in on your story, but my point. So dance is an interesting thing, right? Is dance is athletic, right?
Yeah.
You have to be an athlete to do dance, but it's not
Yeah.
a sport because I cannot, like, there's not someone running out there to interfere with your dancing. you know, unless you're dancing with Tony, but like, usually it's not, there's not that head to head where, like, to me with pool, obviously, even though it's not happening simultaneously, you are competitive. So it's physical and it's competitive. So two people are squaring off against each other, even though it's not very athletic. So you can you, I guess, and again, this is all semantics and pointless, but it's interesting to me because it's a physical activity that's, you know, competitive, even if it's a low level of athleticism. So you can be a highly athletic event, like I said, like a dancer, or maybe even a gymnast, where it's more, you know, someone's not competing directly against you. And you can say, yeah, that person's a high level athlete, but it's not a sport. And so it's just interesting to hear that, you know, that where that line is. Cause,
Yeah.
you know, cause obviously now kids are trying to say that video games are you know, especially head to head video games, they have esports where kids will play that.
It's a competition. It's
Right.
not a sport. It's a competition. That's how I look at it. And that's what pool is. I mean, if you choose to play against someone, it's a competition. You know, like a beauty pageant is, you know, a competition. I wouldn't call a beauty pageant a sport. It's competitive, as is pool, but many other things are, you know, competitive as well. So yeah, it's semantics. And I'm, you know, if somebody wants to call it a sport, go right ahead. But my sports come from my athletics, my boxing, wrestling, MMA shit, whatever, however you want to label it. That's where I consider myself a sport guy. Or I played baseball, I played football, I played softball, you name it, you know, basketball a little. But yeah, you know, Scott and I have had that discussion before. We're in total agreement on that. Yeah. So I got a couple interesting stories. So one day like I said, I was going through my divorce, man. You know, I'm down in the dumps. So it's in the afternoon, early. It's early, like not even in the afternoon. It's like 11:30. So I'm at the tap where we shoot pool, and I'm sitting at one end. There was like one other guy there that I know, and he never wanted to play pool with me. And there was this woman all the way at the end. So I wasn't right by the door. I wasn't paying much attention and shit. So the bartender's asking me, how are things going? Blah, blah, blah. So I'm telling her. And then after about 10, 15 minutes, the woman at the end by the door, well, she starts talking to me. So, you know me, I can't hear good. So I walk down, I sit next to her, and she's going on and on and on and on and on about this guy, you know, just, oh man, trying to make, you know, comparing notes. And I'm like, yeah, boy, this guy's really, well, he really sounds like a loser. You know, what a joke this guy is, blah, blah, blah. She goes, yeah. And his name's Scott Hall. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Hold it. Time out. I said, wait a minute. I'm relatively still new in town. Right. And I'm like, no, I know Scott. I don't know a lot of people, but I know Scott. Now I know who you are because I heard some stories too, you know, about her, right? Which we're not going to get into. Anyhow, so she offers to show me around town. I'll take you everywhere. You know, I says, well, that sounds nice. This is, but I don't want to hear about him anymore. I don't want to hear it. Okay. He's my friend. And I had already caught her in a couple of bullshits. So I knew that she was not true. She's just trying to vent. So I said, well, as long as you don't bring them up, we're fine. She says, all right, well, I got to run. I got to do something. Can you meet me at such and such a place? And I'm like, well, I don't even know where that's at. Okay. So somebody told me where it was, and I did. I met her, and, you know, she couldn't help herself. She just couldn't shut up about the guy. Now, the bad part is we had left the place where I met her. We were at somewhere else. Like we were over the border, like we're in Wisconsin. I'm trapped now because I don't know how to get back. You know, I don't even know where I live, right, from here. And she's on and on and on about this. And we laugh about this. Scott and I laugh about this to this day. Just how it was. Remember that shit, Scott?
She was a piece of work, man.
Yeah. Well, you know, everybody brings baggage, you know, and there's always two sides to every story. But, you know, as I said, well, you catch people in their slip ups. But I think one of the funniest, I got to tell this story. This is a good one. So we knew a guy who, by the way, the earth might be flat. We joke about it once on the show, but we know the earth is round. But this guy, it may be flat because I think he fell off the face of the earth, and his name is Ponytail Tony. Remember him?
Yeah, Ponytail. Yeah.
So Ponytail was going, he was getting divorced, and like, I don't know, a couple weeks down the line or something like that. So Tony, we used to shoot pool with him too. And he's like, "Will you guys, come with me, come to my divorce?" I'm like, "Yeah, man." I says, "Because my divorce is going to be final like 3 days after yours." I said, "So yeah, I'll go, no problem." So we go to Ponytail Tony's divorce. We're sitting in the court, and he had this male judge, and he had a friendly divorce because him and his wife, we all ended up back at the tap partying, and Tony ended up spending the night with his now ex-wife.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, that was like on a Thursday, and my divorce, I think, was on the Monday, the following Monday or the Tuesday. So Tony's like, "Yeah, I'm going to your divorce." Of course, Scott was going to my divorce. Wouldn't you know it? Same courtroom, same judge. When the judge calls my name up, he literally stopped and he's scratching his head because he sees Scott, Tony, and me. He sees the same guys he just saw the other day.
The same guys.
And I look at the judge and I said, "Well, Your Honor, some friends go on vacations together. Other friends go on divorces together." Well, the whole courtroom started busting out laughing. Well, my ex-wife wasn't laughing, but yeah, it was just a coincidence. That we have the same judge. So we go back to the same place, not my ex-wife, but us guys, we go back to the tap, and there were some people in there. They weren't regulars, but they were in there coincidentally the day that Tony got his divorce, and we're partying, celebrating Tony's divorce. So now we're there with me. My name is also Tony. The same people happen to be in, and we're celebrating Tony's divorce. So like, "You guys have been celebrating his divorce for 4 days." I'm like, "No, different Tony, different ex-wife." But it was just coincidental. And yeah, you never, strange things like that can happen, right? I love telling that because that judge, the look on his face, I wish I had video of it, because you can see that judge is like, whoa, like deja vu kind of thing. Like, wait a minute. I thought I went through this already.
Yeah, too bad, Scott. You should have gotten a quick marriage just to make it 3 for 3 for you guys.
Yeah, right.
Quick, and then get right up in there just to finish.
There's time.
Yeah,
there's time for. There's plenty of time for Scott and wife number 4. She's out there somewhere.
Yeah.
No, but we've been through a lot. Health issues. Breakups, just life. Scott's father, who's one of the greatest human beings that ever lived. He's 91 or 92 now.
91.
And he also has Alzheimer's, but it's manageable. It's not as bad as my mom's or anything like that, but he's a great person. And Scott's mother-in-law, stepmother is a wonderful, wonderful lady. So we have some bonds like that, with the taking care of parents and things. Yeah, Scott's helped me through some rough times, man. That's for sure.
Likewise.
Yeah, well, what's some of the fun times that we've had?
Do we have to talk about McHenry?
No. Hey, talk about when we go to Chicago now and then.
Oh my gosh. Well, there's this one bar.
Yeah.
What's it called?
You know what it's called. Charlotte's.
Charlotte's. And a gal in there, all of the gals in there wear dresses, short dresses, beautiful women, gorgeous women. And I wanted to go after this one. Her name is Evelina. She's Polish as hell. And I can barely understand her, which has its upsides. But then we go over to the Irish bar and sitting there with a bunch of Irish guys from Ireland. Patty.
Yeah, Patty Joyce.
Yeah, Patty Joyce. And then towards the end of our excursions around town, we get something to eat, and we always eat at a good place. Awesome restaurants. Great food.
That's the beauty of Chicago. And I had mentioned something to someone just the other day, that the last time we were in Chicago, we were in a stone cold Irish place, left there, went to a stone cold Polish place, left there, went to another place that was half Polish, half Czech. And then we ended up in an Italian restaurant. And, along the way, we'll run into Ukrainians and so on. These places, Chicago's got to be one of the few places left that I'm aware of that you can get that. Cleveland was like that to a degree, but Chicago more so. And I'm very diverse. I was raised ethnically around a whole variety of different ethnicities. And you don't get that out here in the rural area. And I thrive on that. I love the accents. I love listening to their worldview on things. We try to steer away from politics because that's, same like with religion. You're not supposed to go down that rabbit hole because everybody has their own thing, but just their stories and how they look at everyday, like solutions to everyday common problems. It's phenomenal and fantastic for me. Now, granted, people that are born out here in the rural areas, not necessarily this area specifically, this would be uncomfortable for them. They're not used to that. They would probably feel a bit out of place. And I think I have a little advantage over Scott is that I kind of have an ear for the languages, an ear for the accents and so on. Not always. Sometimes I find, believe it or not, some of the Irish guys that I know very difficult to understand especially when they're on, had a few beers and they're very difficult for me because it's a totally different rhythm than a Western or even Eastern European accent. Because I was raised with people who had Western European and Eastern European accents. Okay, a lot of Polish people, and then of course Italian, Croatian, Slovenian, Serb. Probably Bosnian as well. I forget to mention that. But yeah, it's just, I love going to Chicago, but I love when Scott, it gets him out of here and he's in his glory because boy, the women, I've had guys come out here to train from wherever, out of the country or different parts of the country, and they're mesmerized by the beautiful women in Chicago. California gets all the glory, right? All the blondes and all that. Chicago is amazing. And the women that I know, they're approachable. They'll talk to you. They'll make you feel like you're the most important person in the world. And it's not going to go anywhere, but that's okay. Sometimes we all need a little pick me up. And boy, they're sure good at that, aren't they, Scott?
They sure are. Evelina and I got her to go out on a date with me, but she got sick, which probably means I got blown off. But
no, she was sick.
Yeah, she was. She was blowing her nose and stuff like that when we were at the bar.
Well, she wanted to do a double. She wanted me to go out with Sylvia, and I couldn't because I had to take care of my mom. I can't go out on Saturday nights.
Sylvia is gorgeous.
Well, I know Sylvia since she first started there. I was there the very first day she walked in, which was many years ago. And I actually used to have a picture. It's probably on one of my computers. Oh, maybe not. Somebody, we're not going to mention who, went through my stuff and deleted all my photos. But she is very, very nice. And yeah, I've known her. Well, I think I don't want to give her age out, but I've known her probably 15 years. I think she's been there. So I've known her when she was a certain age and now add 15 years to that, but she's really something. And of course, Adita, who's, I think she's back from Poland now too. But I don't get to go to Chicago often, so I can't really see these people as much as I'd like to. But no, Scott and I the best thing about it is true friendship, right? We get on each other's nerves, and I like to, razz them a little bit, but it's because I get hounded. Like, by the way, after this podcast, I have to read you another text that I received last night, Scott, about you. Oh yeah. but you guys, it's almost, it's humorous in the beginning, then it becomes annoying. But, I just, enjoy that company, especially more now that for the last several years, I don't get out. It's rare that I do. And so I enjoy having that companionship, I guess you'd say. Scott was at our video filming in December, which was great to have him there, and he got to meet you guys all got to meet him. Of course, Joe, you've met him before. As a matter of fact, when he broke up, you met one of his ex-girlfriends too, Joe. So remember that?
Oh yeah.
Now, Scott, people always ask this question, that are philosophical. Take your whole life, blah, 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 blah. Would you do it again? So my question is, your whole life in general, would you do it again?
Yeah.
You would?
Yes.
Would you, Joe?
Well, am I allowed to make any changes?
Well, no. I mean,
oh gosh, I don't know. Sitting through sophomore year English might be tough, but I have to do that again. But sure, yeah. I mean, just in general, to do the whole thing. If the choice is that or death, I guess I'd go through it even.
Oh no, that's not the.
But I mean, yeah. I mean, was there things that I would change, or would small things, But the other thing, because thinking about this philosophically, is changes you make could screw everything up too. Because I think
Sure.
about, like, if I just made one choice that was different, who knows? Maybe my kids wouldn't be here. You don't know all the ramifications of things like that. So
Yeah,
you got to take
yeah.
the good with the bad. And I think that's the right philosophical answer. I think to that is that you got to kind of accept your regrets and realize that some of the positives are there because of some of the things that seem, sometimes the mistakes turn out to be something good, in the long run.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, Joe.
She didn't
Yeah,
realize
you
I was
never
such
know.
a deep guy.
Yeah.
But this was great. I really learned a lot about you, Scott. I mean, obviously I've known you and hung out with you, but you don't really get a chance to hear someone's, you don't kind of talk like this when you're hanging out. I mean, you pick up things here and there, but I really
Yeah.
got the impression, it's like, you really were, I kind of admire the things that I've heard. I mean, you really had kind of the professional beach bum part of your life, which is, to me, is one of the most envious things. Forget the great looks and everything Tony talks about, but the fact that you're a surfer, and a guy who played beach volleyball, and you lived on the West Coast and in Hawaii. I mean, wow, what a glorious time. That sounds awesome. Even if you had to be locked up for 90 days at a time with a bunch of guys.
That was the price you paid. Yeah.
So it's great to hear all those stories.
They don't know this about Scott, but when he was, Scott, you've known that you were the best looking guy. How old were you when you first knew?
True.
Yeah, right. So
My
when
mommy-
he was
my
about
mommy told me.
when he was about 21, he was walking along the street and just in New York, I think it was, and he was just talking to a gentleman. Turned out that this guy was an artist, a sculptor, and a pigeon flew overhead and shit right on Scott's head. And that guy says, "Oh, we can make statues of you." That's how we got into the modeling. And most of those statues you see in New York, Cleveland, Chicago, Detroit, he posed for all that shit. A lot of people don't know that.
I was gonna say he does resemble the founding fathers. So really, anytime you look
Right?
at
Yeah. Thanks.
Well, I guess on that note, gentlemen, it sounds like he's segueing. So we've kept Scott long enough, but it was a pleasure to have my Goomba, my Skabooch. Hey, it's awesome to have you here, and maybe we'll have you again. Maybe one of these days in the spring or summer, if things change here. Scott and I'll do one remotely. We'll
Yeah,
do another
sure.
one with you. When
live
we're out
from
and about
Charlotte. Live from Charlotte, so we have to do an episode.
Right from Charlotte's. Yeah.
that would be a beautiful thing. Yeah.
That would.
Some of the guys that I've trained, I take them there, or I used to when I was in the city, and they want to go back. They just like, let's go there. Let's go there. They don't want to go anywhere else. But all right. So everybody out there, thanks for listening. And today was a little off.
Thanks for having me, Tony. Joe.
Oh, no,
thank
yeah, all your ex-girlfriends always say the same thing to me. No,
Yeah.
thanks for having me, Tony. No, see, that's how we can. we can kid around, but I only joke like that with people that I like, and that's why I'm not joking, Scott. Anyway. All right. I will see you guys next week. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Joe.
All right. See you later.
Thanks, Joe. Take it easy, buddy.
Yep.
Thank you.